Ikomi Boka, Ikomi Boka, Ikomi Boka. It's test weekend, and we are obviously in a not so familiar time slot, Alberic. This time around, chatting to our viewers on a Friday evening. Good evening, everyone, and good evening to you. How are you?
Lekker, Annie. Good to see you, man. So ek kyk niks is eintlik usual nie meer nie. As everything with load shedding, alles is omkeer. Ek bedoel, yesterday, jy weet nie of jy nou stage 4 is nie. Ek het direk uitgevind ons is stage 6. Wat vir my is skok gewees. So yeah, dis maar hoe gaan in South Africa, but look guys, we look forward to positivity and hopefully the box can bring it home this weekend. And yeah, how are you doing, Annie?
Now, otherwise, apart from the load shedding, throwing spanner in the works, it's been good. It's been good. It's been, quite an exciting few weeks. And tonight we're going to try in this episode to catch up on those episodes, or let me say, the topics that we did miss. But we also have an interesting expert on some of our topics. Tonight we will talk about the URC, the rugby championships, and the Stormers being crowned the URC champions for 2022. And as you can see, I'm very chuffed about that performance. And then also we're going to chat about the Junior Boks. We're going to chat about the Springboks test. There's also other tests. The All Blacks playing Ireland. The Australia will be in action against England. And we learned that many of you guys online, and that came through on Facebook, you are F1 fanatics. So we're going to chat about F1 tonight. And we have an expert online. We know it's a big topic also. There's a lot of controversy. So there's quite a few themes, Alberic, a nice mix-up of topics to chat about.
Yeah, no, for sure. And let's hope our cricket weekend. It's our first time on a Friday night, so as Wokmari, people can join us. God, these are unusual time slot for us. But yeah, I've got a lot to talk about, a lot to catch up on. But I'm glad you mentioned the Stormers. Very glad about that. HEIN first in overall champions of the URC, which is great for South Africa. In fact, I mean, the fact that there is a team that can brag with that their name is on the trophy for the first time, and the first time into the tournament. I think it's an amazing achievement already. And yes, a lot has been said about the fact that it's not playing the best teams of Europe. But at the end of the day, whoever we beat and the best of the rest, the next hurdle awaits. And we all know next year is going to be the big one against the big guys from England and France, and it's going to be huge.
No, for sure. And remember, although there's a lot of saying that we didn't play the best teams, there are 3 South African teams now that will participate in the Heineken Cup, as we know it, the Heineken Championship, the European Championship, where the heavyweights of European club rugby all participate in. The Stormers, the Bulls, and the Sharks will be there. But we can't take anything away from the Stormers. They did it the hard way, and also myself included, we didn't necessarily even give them a chance against the Bulls. Although they played in Cape Town, I still thought that the Bulls will have the edge on the Stormers, and the Stormers in the second half really came out all guns blazing, and to the delight of the Cape Town crowd, walked away with the title, and I would say a well-deserved victory for the Stormers, and certainly well-deserved champions of the URC for 2022.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and we spoke about it before, I think it's in fact, it is a major achievement for the Stormers against the fact that they've had so much administrative issues behind the scenes. We've spoken about it a lot, what's been going on. And they managed to and we speak about their bank balances, not having the kind of bank balance that the other unions have that also played. They did fantastically well. I think it's an amazing achievement, and against, like I said, and I hope for this time around that the guys in the boardroom can sort themselves out, and that we could have a proper solution as to a way forward, and hopefully there's proper investors knocking on the door of VP Rugby.
No, for sure. For sure. Obviously, guys, like we mentioned, we have a few topics. Last night we would have had a guest. Our usual slot would have been allocated to a guest. Unfortunately, again, load shedding. Not only myself, but also the guest that we would have wanted on impacted by load shedding. So we will have that guest next week again. So if you are online, we know it's a Friday evening. Perhaps some of you are still braaiing. Some of you are doing getting into the groove for test rugby. If you're online, drop us a comment. Just say hello to us. Say evening to us. We just want to know that you are online and that you are here with us. Ek is seker ek en Alberic praat dan nou nie net met mekaar hier nie. Daar is al mense wat na ons luister. But Alberic, moving on swiftly, it is test match rugby. And for tonight, obviously, we got an expert on, but for the first time in quite a while, we're going to see our Springboks in action. And that is why we are donned in our green and gold. It's been a week where there's been a lot has been said, but also, in anticipation for the team that Ninaber would have selected. It seems to me that the Springboks might slightly have an edge over the Welsh team, but we've had our fair share of losses against Wales, and we are very wary of doing so again.
I know, but dink jy nie ons behoort die manne weg te sit hier en is nie om without having a chip on our shoulder as the world champions, but the Springboks should comfortably win these guys, and we always end up, and I think it's maybe the clashing of style or the styles that maybe very similar, that we always end up in a 5.3-point game against the Welsh, and I really think that I think again the Springboks should win this very comfortably, and not necessarily like back in the old days where you would beat Wales by 20 points. It would be a comfortable, at least a goal and a half at least difference. That would be the difference I think on the score on the day. But yeah, we should beat it comfortably, I think. And in fact, in all three tests, we should be walking away 3-0 at least.
No, for sure. Dit is natuurlijk wat ons sê. Vanaand het ons 'n expert, die ou, hy was voorheen al 'n gas op die Têkkel Talk Show. Hy ken die ovaalbal, hy ken die rondebal, en hy gaan later ook 'n bietjie saam met ons gesels soos beloof, as hy 'n expert en 'n fanatic op die Formula 1 circuit. Kom ons kry gou net ons gas op skerm. HEIN natuurlik voorheen saam met ons gesels. Goeienaand HEIN en welkom by die Têkkel Talk Show. Is lekker om met jou te gesels en lekker om te sien dat jy ook die groen en goud dra vanaand.
Dankie HEIN, dankie Alberic en al die ouens wat ons join op die show. Is altyd lekker om saam met julle op die show te wees. Is energizing, is refreshing wat julle ouens bring en ja, jy weet soos ek sê, as dit die groen en goud is, dan wat is dit, jy weet. So ja, lekker om te wees.
Nee, verseker. Daar was baie gesê, baie bespiegel. Daar is 'n paar, ek wil sê 'n paar klein verstellingkies in die Springbokke se beginspan. Wales natuurlik op die oomblik wil ek sê regtig sukkel om kop bo water te hou oor die algemeen. Wat dink jy van Ninaber se spankeuses nommer 1 en ook die voorbereiding? Ek dink ons media skryf as te ware, wil ek amper sê, skryf wel as 'n bietjie af in hierdie fikse en soos Alberic gesê het, verwag ons op die tellbord om gemaklik te wen. Dink jy dit gaan so gemaklik op die veld wees soos wat ons almal verwag?
Bietjie ek dink as die eerste helfte gaan wees soos die Junior Boks se eerste helfte teen in Italië, en dan gaan dit goed gaan, definitief. Wat ek wel kan sê is dat Wales is nie eers in die top 5 nie. Ek dink hulle is iewers nommer 7 in die wêreld. So ek ryk hierdie bokspan. Ek het 'n paar question marks om sekere selections. Daar's ook Jake White wat sê bespiegelinge of wat hy in die hoed gooi in terme van die overseas selections en daai klas van ding. Maar ek dink in hierdie geval gaan dit goed werk in ons guns, want jy weet ons het in die URC gespeel. Baie van hierdie spelers het in die noordelike halfrond gespeel. Ons weet hoe hierdie ouens speel. En soos ek sê, jy weet dit bring 'n ander dinamika nou na ons game toe, waar ons weet hoe die regsplaas oorkom, ons weet hoe hulle speel. En ons het ook die ponde nou man. Ja, ons bring die ponde daarom huis toe so. Dis daarom iets goed. En daarbey gesê, jy weet, as jy kyk ons soos Jasper Wiese, jy weet, hy was in die finaal was hy man of the match. Jy weet, en dit sê iets, jy weet, daar's iets reg aan Springbok rugby. Die span die gewen het daar so in die UK is ook predominantly was baie Suid-Afrikaners in die span so. Dit sê iets, jy weet, en as jy self kyk in die Franse ligas ook, die Suid-Afrikaners wat hulle trade daar apply. So ek dink dit gaan ons gonna stand us in good stead. Exciting, jy weet, en is Loftus, capacity crowd of Loftus, moet nie dit vergeet nie. Jy weet, hy is al reeds sold out. So dit kan net goed gaan en ek dink die Bokke is raring om te gaan. Die supporters is daar so en ek dink die unions is reg om weer in te cash na die COVID pandemic, ja.
I think with that said, and there's one of the comments come through. I see a fellow that's come through. I've got a left-sided view. Don't you think the Welsh would be better prepared now that we played in the URC? Which is a good point. To your point of knowing, these players and them playing in the URC against us. But looking at the Welsh squad, and we as South Africans were always looking at the Boks and what the team they're going to put onto the field. But looking at the squad, do you think players like, the Dan Biggers and those guys that might not have made a difference in the Lions series, might have gained from that series and maybe have an edge going into this series, knowing that what to expect for this time around against the Boks?
Yes and no, it's a double-edged sword. Dan Bigger comes back here as a loser, number one. He's probably at the point to prove. And we didn't really test them on hard field. So these guys are going to go to Loftus, and I think they're going to have a tough run for the money. With that being said, if you were to look at the Boks team again, that a lot of these guys ply the trade in the Northern Hemisphere, not only in the championship we played in, but also in the Heineken Cup. There are guys playing in France, and there are guys playing in Japan as well. So we bring this whole mix of eclectic styles that are going to come together. Whereas these guys have predominantly only played in the UK. And I think if you look at this team, you've got George North, that's essentially the guy played center. He's playing on the outside now, So and you got Dan Bigger, Other than that, I have my doubts about this team. Very inexperienced and probably going to follow the same route we want to do to try and build for the World Cup that is coming up.
No, for sure. I still think you're looking at the Wales team there. It's not a bad team, and I think they're mixing a few things up. And I think some of their recent results might even be the reason for that. But I just want to latch on to what Furlow is saying, Zilo or HEIN. Listen, perhaps. Have we not exposed ourselves a little bit more for the teams to prepare better against ourselves? And I think you've latched onto that. But I think what I want to mention is that we are still in a puzzle whether our participation in the United Rugby Championship has improved us as a national side, or are we still gonna look back and say perhaps we must still play against Australia and New Zealand? And I think perhaps it's not the time now in the Welsh series to measure that, but we do know New Zealand will be in South Africa for 2 test matches later on in the year. From your perception and what you've seen, taking into account we had 2 teams in the URC final, do you believe that participating in the URC improved Springbok rugby, or are there still a few question marks?
I think it would be very premature and very disingenuous to make a call at this point, because we haven't measured ourselves since playing in the URC. There's also the part. I really think the proof in the pudding will come end of this year when we have the outbound tour to the UK. Because remember, we've now played as unions, as franchises in the north. We've come back. We're going to play a Northern Hemisphere team locally. We're going to compare ourselves against our Southern Hemisphere partners. We've always played again, and that will be a nice gauge for us to see, where we are. Have we progressed or have we regressed? And then we do go up north at the end of the year. That will be the proof in the pudding. Said, guys, that was a stupid mistake. We should have stayed down in the south. Or boys, we made the right decision by going up north. And that's how I see it. I don't want to speculate at this point in time, but I think come Saturday, we'll have some warm and fuzzy feeling, or we're going to say, geez, boys, we made a mistake. Hey, we probably have to look at this a little bit more.
No, for sure.
But let's look at the Springbok squad, and it was announced for this game. I mean, from my side, I think it's a very, very strong squad. A nice mixture of bringing in guys that we've been calling for the last season and a bit to be in the starting lineup. Guys like Damien Willems, that was bound to make an appearance, and guys like, for example, Sam Murat has come onto the bench, which is also big for him and his family, and also obviously the legacy that was discussed in the media this week. But looking at the Springbok team, on paper, they should comfortably win the Welsh team. Looking at experience, you've got probably 90% of these players or 80% of these players played in the World Cup final. Cohesion is probably the word that comes to mind when looking at a team like this. Not so?
Yeah, for sure. I think Derek, if you take into account that we are without Dwayne Vermeulen and Pieter-Steph du Toit, the luxury to have to choose between Jasper Wiese and Ivan Roos at number 8 to replace a guy like Dwayne Vermeulen, and then you have a number 7 like Francois Mostert coming in. But even without Dwayne Vermeulen and Pieter-Steph du Toit, I think if you look at the options on the bench, Elrich Louw and Kwagga Smith coming off the bench, taking into account that we are perhaps without the two very best players in our pack, that tells us that Springbok rugby and South African rugby is in a very, very good space in terms of versatility, in terms of options. It now, obviously, leading up to the World Cup, we now need to find those combinations, and hopefully these guys can stay injury free, and we'll perhaps we can go all the way and bring the World Cup back again. It all starts tomorrow against Wales, but looking at the team, I will have to agree with you. This is a team that on paper can beat any side on any day, and I think Ninaber and his coaching staff on a very, very good wicket at present.
Yeah, absolutely. I think and again, like I mentioned, I think it's cohesion and just the fact that they have been playing as a squad for such a long time. They've been looking solid for a while, and I think it just bodes well for us going into that rugby championship. And again, looking at the rugby championship, this is the first year that we'll be playing 2 games away, home and not home and away as we did before. Which, if there's one year that we can win the rugby championship, I hope would be this year, because the All Blacks will be playing South Africa twice this year. Looking forward to the series. What do you think it's as a comfortable scoreline? Would it be a 3-0 whitewashing? Would it be a 2-1? Would the Boks be happy with that result, or are they looking at the 3-0 as a comfortable, saying like this is what we should be doing?
My opinion is, I think Ninaber will go for a whitewash, because again, it stands them in good stead. Whitewashing Wales and proving that going to play in the Northern Hemisphere was the right thing to do. So, we've beaten the British Irish Lions. Let us beat a union. We've beaten the franchises, the Lions. Let's beat the Welsh down here, and then we beat the All Blacks. We won the championship. We go north and we go win there. Then we know, we are building for the World Cup. But what I want to say is that, I think we must just be very cognizant that we don't follow a Heineke-Meyer approach and sit with egg on our faces like we did in 2015.
Yeah.
Where we sit and we have all these old men and we drag them all the way to the World Cup, and then we see our backsides there. We've got Evan Roos sitting in the wings. We've got all these youngsters, eclectic mix of youngsters. The time is, play them now. Use them, play them. You're good enough. You go. Yeah. Sorry, sir, you don't make the cut. We shift you one side. Don't be scared. I mean, if I look at it, maybe it's a blessing in disguise that Dwayne Vermeulen is injured, Pieter-Steph du Toit, because we know what they can do. But now we can build this pipeline of solid players that can come in. We can chop and change like the All Blacks always used to have. We should follow the same model like that.
Yeah, very interesting statements. And I think before we step off the Springboks, if you've noticed, and latching on to what HEIN is saying, to bleed in the youngsters, they've swapped around Willie Leroux and Damien Willemse. It's a selection that puzzles me, but obviously Ninaber and his key, they know best, because Damian Willemse has predominantly played at number 12 for the Stormers, and he was the pivotal guy along with Francois Steyn. He was the cog in the wheel when it came to that 6-2 split. It's very, very interesting that he now gets the nod ahead of Warwick Galant, who I believe has played brilliant rugby for the Stormers. He gets the nod ahead of Warwick at fullback in a position where he did not play for quite some time. Very interesting selection. I believe there's a lot to read about Damien's selection tomorrow for tomorrow's test, perhaps as a predecessor for Willie Leroux in the long term. In your opinion, Hein?
I think very interesting, that Damian Willemse has played predominantly on the inside center, in the center position for Western Province, where Warwick Galant was the fullback, and the guy did very, very, very well. Yes, we know he's going to head back north, but we shouldn't be punishing him for going north and then putting him on the back burner. You understand? Where we do play overseas plays in the teams anyway, so it doesn't make sense. What I want to say is that very interesting is that he shows the Herschel Yankees over Jordan Hendrickse. And I'm going to put this to you guys on record now. Jordan Hendrickse is going to become the best scrum half in the world in the next 2 years. And I can bet my bottom dollar on that. The youngsters got that X factor, that Frederick Michalak feel around him, You've got that comfortable feeling when the dude's got a ball in his hand, he does a box kick, it's going to be a proper box kick. It's going to go where you want to. He's got that proper physique, posture of being upright as a scrum half like yours used to be. And that's what I see, you don't have these guys that are short, bulky, stocky. He's got a nice flowing pass on him, and I can tell you guys now, I would really have loved to see this youngster, because remember, he did very well against the Lions when they were here. Unfortunately, he got injured, but we would have seen a lot more of him with the Lions there. And I think it's unfair to punish him that he got injured, yes. But I would have loved to see him against Wales, starting against Wales.
Wow. But that's it. That's really massive, massive. But with that said, I don't think it was the injury that stopped though. I think it was the fact that he had a red card. I think it was in the Sharks game versus the Lions. But with that said, looking into the fact that Warwick wasn't selected for this game, do you think it's a matter of game time? Because they are looking ahead, they probably know Warwick is the best fullback on form at the moment. A lot of Africans know it. Maybe Jacques knows it, maybe he does, I don't know. But do you think it's a matter of giving him game time to make sure that when it comes to him playing that utility role from the bench, that he has enough game time to do it against Wales, instead of throwing him in the deep end against an All Black side or Australian side, etc.?
I think it's two-edged, and I'm going to tell you why. First one is that they've stated they want him to be the next Frans Steyn, because he can play multiple positions. And because he can play multiple positions, if you look at the bench, you only have Herschel Yankees and you've got Willie Leroux. Willie Leroux can only cover fullback and maybe the wing. The rest you can forget about it. You are dead in the water with him. However, now you've got Damian Willemse there, and he can cover this whole array of positions should somebody get injured. And I think that was the deciding factor. That you've got this player, X factor, can cover multiple positions. Should somebody get injured in the bench, we can slot him in there. We take Willie to the back. And I think that was the rationale behind the decision there. And also, of course, to grow him, give him more game time, and knowing that you've got this utility player.
Yeah, for sure. It will be interesting to see how that pans out. But wise words, I think we are all in consensus, at least, that we're expecting tomorrow that the Springboks should walk away with a victory against Wales. Hein, speaking about youngsters, you've mentioned, on our eye for the World Cup. I think it's going to be a very, very injustice if we don't talk about the under 20 junior Springboks. They've done very, very well up until present. I think they started in their first game. It looked a bit that they were still acclimatizing, but they really took off in the second half. And again, in their second match, showed that there are certainly quite a few gems in that team. And hopefully, we'll, in the near foreseen future, see some of these players coming into our senior professional ranks as well.
Most definitely, Heini. Derek, there's the sad loss of Kane Moody, exciting player. I would have loved to see him, guys. that have played, you know, senior rugby at a high level at the junior age, you know, that very well for the Bulls. Then there's also injury to Brad Davies, you know, player for the Sharks, also got injured. So we'd have loved to see these two guys. But then again, you know, you've got some good players in the squad. You know, you've got the eighth man, Cameron Hanekom, you know, live wire, guy that carries the ball, solid player. And you also have a youngster, man, you know, Donovan Don. He's from the West Coast, you know. The only player in the squad that doesn't play for a franchise, plays for the Griffins. But excellent, you know, putting his hand up, performing, doing well. And then, of course, the captain, Sesha Ngomezulu, you know, that we know is an excellent player, you know, blowing hot and cold, you know. And I think often the scoreline doesn't do justice because, you know, the conversions that we doesn't make. That first half against England, you know, was probably the worst I've seen an under-20 side play in a very, very long time. But then in the second half, you know, I think the guys came, they redeemed themselves, and they showed character because, you know, the English were very physical and strong, and they took us on at our own game, you know. So very, very good in that. And then, of course, against Ireland, you know, starting like a brick penthouse on fire. But then again, you know, the shocking second half, you know, not really true reflection of what it was. But then we should be cognizant that the French, not the French, the Irish are the Six Nations champions. So we've beaten them, we've beaten England. And now the French cocks are waiting for us, or the French hens, or whatever you want to call them.
And they are very. Yeah, each and every year he's mentioning the French. We've seen over the years the French, they just turn up at age group level, and it seems to be now the French, they've got it right in the last 3 years to take those youngsters and come through, because in my book, the senior French side reaping the benefits now of youngsters that played in this competition a few years ago. So it just shows how tough the French might be when we do face them.
Yeah, I think they've built this continuity since, you know, the Under-20 World Cup a couple of years ago. Intermac and DuPont, those are players that played together. And that same group of players just carried right through. And you can see, again, that, you know, that kind of play between them is just almost like they're reading each other's minds in the field. But I think that's always going to be the big test. And again, looking to the Springboks, I know you mentioned it now, is the fact that at the end of the year, we're facing the French again, which is going to be, I think, the biggest test for the Boks this year, playing in France against the French. And now they're playing at the moment. But yeah, looking towards, I think the team to beat in the storm would be the French side. There is, you know, whether it's rust or whether it's a way of the Boxers finding the Junior Boks feeling each other through this tournament. It's there to see. I think a game against the French will see. The one player that stood out for me was Ethan James. Exciting inside center. You know, he looks like he has a good step on him. He's always nugget. He's always, you know, looking at hitting spaces. There might be one or two flaws in you know, probably the way he's running and in straight line. I know you mentioned it earlier in the week when we spoke. But it's nice to see those young players coming through and obviously getting the opportunity. Hopefully next year that they'll feature in some kind of franchise.
Most definitely, Derek. You know, I think the under-20s really start to show who the guys are that are eventually going to end up as seniors and in the box squad. You know, so, and I think, you know, when I look at the squad, it's a very, very mature squad. If I look at them, you know, because a lot of these guys, some of these guys have played, you know, franchise rugby, and they've played union rugby, and they've played in the seniors. From what I see, it's going to stand us in good stead for the future. Some of these players will definitely play in the next World Cup, not the World Cup in France. What I want to say is, that, like you guys have mentioned, we're playing France end of year in France. The World Cup is in France next year. And if we start setting the trend, we beat France at under 20 level, we beat them end of this year. The tone is set for the World Cup that the Springboks are coming in here as favorites. Everybody else is the underdogs. And, you know, we went to Japan somewhat as the underdogs, but I think in our minds, we knew we were going to win this World Cup. You know, and I think it's probably the only World Cup ever where I was as confident as I was when we went to Japan. So come end of this year, we'll have a good gauge and feel where we are. And if I were to just take you back that Take Salman Murad, this guy came through the ranks, also played all these levels. He's getting rewarded now, as a youngster. So I think we're in good hands. We beat France. And remember, I'm going to say this quickly. If we beat France, we end up number 1 in our pool. If we end up number 1 in our pool, we play number 1 in Pool B. And Pool B is not as strong as Pool A because we have England, we have Ireland, we have France in our pool. On the other side, you have Scotland, Georgia, and whoever else is there. So we will literally come head to head with a union that's weaker than any other union in our pool, meaning we will win this tournament comfortably. It will be a good story to tell for Mr. Têkkel when he comes back, his coaching staff, Barry McDonald, those guys, and the hard work that the development guys at SA Rugby are doing. It shows it's bearing fruit. And again, the French are good because the development and feeder systems are so good.
Yeah.
And I think we are replicating that, and we're very good because we've got a player base already at school level going up. And club rugby is also starting to show, that it's developing, it's getting better. So yeah, I think we're in a good space at this point.
Interesting stuff. A lot of interesting stuff, and obviously we've now fast forwarded. We spoke about our game against the All Blacks. We know there's a few tests against the All Blacks, and then we also spoke about our prospects at the World Cup, and HEIN just telling about the dynamics and how important, if we can really take Wales and give them a whitewash, we give the All Blacks the hiding that we think we can give them. It will just put the momentum with the Springboks. But as HEIN is saying, we need to tick all those boxes because for the first time in a very long time, we have a French team with a forward pack that can match anybody in the world. We take the French for the last few years. We all spoke about French flair. They had the back line to razzle, dazzle, and entertain. But the team that we are seeing now at senior level, they have the forwards to even match a forward pack like the Springboks, and that makes them very, very, very dangerous. And in their own backyard, they're going to be a formidable team to beat. Definitely. We see some movement, and good evening to everybody online again. We spoke about the rugby, and obviously also spoke about the junior Springboks, and some of you are also asked to speak about some Formula One. Now, HEIN, you are obviously a Formula One fanatic yourself, tuning in every weekend when they are racing. You watch it from qualifying up until the checkered flag, and up until now, the season has been quite a spectacular season, with Mercedes-Benz being far off the pace when it comes to the pace of the Ferraris and the Honda Red Bull team. What is your take up until now? And anticipating the British Grand Prix this weekend, what can we expect?
Exciting weekend. We have the British Grand Prix at the home of British Motorsport, Silverstone. That's happening there. But just to look back, when the season started, everybody was, Mercedes AMG, they're going. Max is going to give them a run for their money. Bam, first race, Charles Leclerc wins. Ferrari is on pace, showing everybody, the heels, running circles around everybody. Bam, second race, Max Verstappen wins. Charles Leclerc engine issues, reliability issues for the Ferraris, So Charles Leclerc 2 wins out of 9. Max Verstappen 6 wins out of 9. So 9 races are gone, and these guys are ahead in the points, and there's a lot of dynamics around this. Charles Leclerc suffering from Ferrari, Sergio Perez sitting in second place. You've got a 1-2 for Red Bull already. So it's gonna be a very titanic battle this weekend. If you recall last year, very interesting. Lewis Hamilton won at home. Max Verstappen gave him a run for his money, and there was a big controversy around this race. So it's gonna be very interesting. What I want to tell you guys, something interesting is that during this week there was some comments made by Nelson Piquet. Now Nelson Piquet was a Formula One racing driver. The guy had 3 championships. He's a Brazilian guy. In my opinion, he was a good racer, but not the best. If I compare him to Nigel Mansell, Senna, Alain Prost, I don't rate him in that category. Right? But the guy made an interesting comment, and this came out in a podcast that was done last year. where the guy made some derogatory comments about Lewis Hamilton. And Twitter exploded, and they were paying for PK's blood, and people were calling him out, and the guy eventually came, and his brother went on to Twitter and had the audacity to say his mother used to call them by this name, you know, and other Brazilians saying, no, you're talking crap, that's nonsense. It's not like that. You know, to try and cover it up. What's more interesting is that PK's daughter liked her uncle's tweet. PK's daughter dates Max Verstappen. How's that? So within Formula One, you know, there are all these little dynamics and these little minds get planted to upset certain players, and you know, we pull a podcast from them to upset the apple cart a little bit, yeah. And it's common knowledge that Ayrton Senna is Lewis Hamilton's idol. And Senna was by I think in a vote by 217 drivers in 2009, former Formula One drivers voted Senna as the greatest Formula One racer ever. And PK didn't like that. I think they asked him in one interview, they asked, so who's the better racer between you and Senna? And he quipped, who's alive? I mean, how better can you be, you know, to say something like that? I mean, they have some respect. So a very interesting week, lot of dynamics coming into here, really hoping, you know, that it has to be AMG, Mercedes-Benz AMG has to come back, you know, and give us a good show. The Ferraris need to work on the reliability. The guys at Maranello needs to work on getting Charles Leclerc a reliable car. The guy's fast, he's gifted. And then of course, you know, Max is coming and he's bringing the money, the pounds, you know. So the guy's coming out for a fight. He's put it out there that, you know, he's a strong contender. And I think, you know, it's going to be good for the sport, you know, that it's not one-sided, lopsided, and to give the other guys a run for the money. But exciting. It's the British Grand Prix, Silverstone. It's a historic track. Not the fastest track around there, but I think it will be a very interesting weekend. Practice starts tomorrow, and then qualifying on Saturday. So let's hold thumbs and see. It's going to be exciting, yes.
I think just one question before
I think Formula One.
Oh, go with you.
Sorry, I think we put the late.
No. You go.
You know, that's it. It does have a lot of. There's a lot of spice that's added to this mix with the whole PK comment, etc. You mentioned the reliability of the Ferrari cars. Can they turn? Is it possible to turn around? I mean, you yourself, you engineer, is it something that can be turned around like in, you know, a couple of weeks to have that sorted out? Is that possible to have that done?
I think Alberto, we need to understand the design dynamics around these cars. You know, the difference are so small. The margin for error are microscopic, if I can put it to you that way. A change on a wing, you know, a setting on an engine, on the timing, on the parameter settings, on the mapping, you know, how the cam caster settings, temperature on the tires. For these guys, for the Ferraris, remember they all Ferraris they've had engine reliability issues. So it's good. They've taken this. There's a reliability issue on the engine, and they've got a brilliant team of engineers. Remember when Schumacher went there? Schumacher says this is the worst car I got in, and he had to work with these guys for a year and a half. They find this. So these guys, I think they are as good as they get. You know, I rate Ferrari when it comes to engines and cars. Now I rate Honda. You know, I think Honda is as good as it gets, and of course Renault. You know, Mercedes-Benz have proven that. But I think when Mercedes-Benz, somewhere along the line, somebody had some inside info. Yeah, hey guys, we're going to 1600 V6s now. You know, work at they had a head start and they were running. You know, they're dominating a bit. I could be wrong, but it's just too much of a coincidence that these guys just got it right like that. I think, you know, they have the ability to turn it around. And remember, out of these failures, you know, learnings do come. You can't continue failing continuously. So they have a fast engine, make it reliable. And I think that's it. That's the only thing the guys at Maranello are going to ask the Scuderia team is that, Scuderia guys, please just get this bloody car reliable. Let's win some races. We can finally challenge the RBRs and the AMGs.
I just touching on what you've mentioned now, and for those we didn't mention that HEIN being an engineer himself, would understand the dynamics. You spoke about something very, very interesting. And the one thing I want to ask you is, we all know that Lewis Hamilton struggled, and the reason for that was perhaps, let's call it a trial and error approach from Mercedes-Benz, where they tried a few things, it didn't work. Why do you think, given the fact that Russell, his teammate, being on a specification very early in the season, it worked? It seemed to me that, that he wasn't very close to the Hondas and the Ferraris. Why, from an engineering point of view, would you leave Lewis Hamilton hanging, given the fact that you have the recipe to bring him closer on identical spec as Russell, and perhaps with Lewis's experience and his vast, this is a multiple champion. Perhaps he could have been much closer in the championship if they had him on a specification much closer to Russell's car at much earlier stage in the season. Do you agree with that? And why do you think they delayed that? Because last week we saw that Lewis Hamilton is much closer than what he was 3-4 races prior to the one that he had last week, where he actually, I would say, against all odds, drove the car to a very, very respectable position.
Yes, I know. We must understand in these Formula One teams, they are teams, but each team has got its own unique set of engineers and mechanics that work on it. And I think when Russell came, he brought with him a team of engineers as well, and Hamilton had his team of engineers that were always working with him, and I think these guys may have brought in a different type of dynamic when they did that. And it takes time to catch up with these kind of things. So within the teams, they also have the small battles. You can recall Nico Rosberg's battles with Lewis Hamilton. These guys also had the infighting and there were times when Rosberg was really challenging Lewis Hamilton. So the cars are not the same, and you can understand that. And the teams are not the same. And there's different tuning and settings, and I prefer my car set up like that. I prefer my car set up like that. So that's it. With that being said, George Russell is not a bad driver. Let me put that to bed now. The guy is good. He's a very, very good driver. And I think the AMG guys may also say, you know what? We've got this toppy here. He's not a really toppy, but I mean, with the amount of wins that he has, he's a toppy. This guy may call it quits at one time here, and leave us hanging. We need to start, giving this youngster that we have here, who's coincidentally British. Yes, it's Mercedes AMG, but these guys are based in the UK, and they've got a massive following in the UK. Let's get another Brit in here, let him follow up, and then, gradually, we bring and we phase him in, because there were also talks that Hamilton was wanting to quit, and he was, was fed up of this, and the Black Lives Matter, and all of these things that were weighing on him. And I also think maybe the side shows, all these side shows that are happening, that are starting to distract him. Like I said, the Black Lives Matter campaign, the inclusivity of the sport towards other people, and gender neutrality, and all of those things. The guy, in fact, sometimes the FIA are a very difficult bunch of people. Where, and I would request the viewers maybe to go look up on what Senna has done and how he stood up against the FIA, and Niki Lauda, how he stood up against the FIA, because the FIA has always been like an old boys club, and you can't stand up against establishment, and that's why Senna was never favored with the FIA. Niki Lauda walked out, and he actually walked out and gave the championship to Nelson Piquet in 1 year. So sorry to talk about Nelson Piquet again, but anyway, so that's the dynamics within F1. Yeah. Yes.
No, I think the less said about Nelson Piquet, the better. But yeah, shocking, guys. Look, it sets it up quite nicely. I've got some catching up to do on Netflix. We're not selling Netflix, guys. There's no ads in this show, but we're not selling Netflix. But I need to catch up on the Formula One show and see all the antics. Yeah, it's going to be exciting. It's going to be brilliant.
Just as I'm putting you on the spot, do you think Mercedes-Benz, with the competent engineers, with the two very, very good drivers in their camp, we know that they can turn it around? Will they challenge Ferrari and Red Bull this season?
I think they can challenge a race or 3, but I don't think they can challenge the championship. Unfortunately, I think that ship has sailed. We've gone too far down. 9 races are gone. I think there's probably another 11 or 10 races left. So I don't think it's possible, this Max Verstappen has already won 9. If he wins another 3, he's probably won the championship already. And that's the long and the short of it, it will then boil down to probably, Constructors' Championship at best, saving face. Some guys will probably bow out of the sport at this point in time, but it's maybe early days, but exciting times for Formula One. I think even more exciting is next year we may see a Formula One race in South Africa at Kyalami.
That's awesome.
Ons maar seker 'n sponsor kry LB vir ons om by Tekkel om uit te kom wat ek het gesien. Hulle bespiegel oor die moontlike pryskaartjies en dit is definitief boek aan ons 4 plek. Maar as mense daar buite wat Têkkel Talk Show kyk en hulle gaan vrymoedigheid het om natuurlik vir Alberry en myself na Kyalami te stuur om hierdie wonderlike geleentheid te gaan gadeslaan. Zilo, weer eens baie dankie dat jy vir ons gejoin het vanaand. Ou met baie insig vanaf die tennisballetjie tot die rugbyballetjie en ook wanneer dit kom by die karretjie ry is jy ook kundig en altyd bereidwillig om jou kundigheid met ons te deel en met ons kykers te deel. Weer eens baie dankie en kom ons hoop dat jy at least reg is wanneer dit kom by die Springbokke môre, want dit gaan dan 'n tranendal wees as ons geliefde Springbokke vasval op ons tuiste teen Wallis. Maar groete tuis en ons gaan binnekort weer saam met jou gesels hier op die Têkkel Talk Show.
Dankie Heini, dankie Derek, dankie almal wat na die show kyk en ja, dankie manne, hou aan met die goeie werk wat julle doen. Ons like it and anytime. Ek love julle show. Baie dankie.
Thanks Heini.
Goeie. Alleen ben ik altijd lekker om met HEIN te gesels, 'n man wat vir ons 'n bietjie dieper sport kyk as ons twee alleen.
Ja,
vir ons was altyd lekker om sy insig te kry want dit maak vir ons ook wyser as sport fanatics wil ek as te ware sê.
Yeah, no, exactly. It gives a lot of insight that we don't, like you said, we look at one angle. He's looking at many other angles. Maybe that's his engineering eye that kicks in. But yeah, I think that's exactly what HEIN brings, and it's great to have him on the show tonight and just hear the insights. It's amazing, and just to listen about everything with us so baie goed as dit kom by 'n kar en woens en goed is so yeah, thanks HEIN. It was well done.
En dan ook 'n spesiale dank. Ek weet dit is 'n baie odd tyd, maar ek dink die gedagte agter hierdie show was om nie vir julle weer te droppie. Ons het gesê ons wil graag 'n staande show hê. Ons was determined om die show te hê, maar natuurlik is daar sekere goed wat buite ons beheer is en een van dit is loadshedding. Dit is 'n realiteit op hierdie oomblik. Daardie kundigheid is buite ons beheer. Ons val in net soos julle. Maar as daar mense is wat vanaand ingekom het om te kom luister, baie dankie. Ons weet daar is ouens soos Furle op die lyn gewees en van die ander mense wat comments gestuur het. Baie dankie dat julle 'n tydjie afgeknip het van julle Vrydag aan om bietjie saam met ons te gesels. Dan net weer ons WhatsApp lyn. Guys, ons wil graag 'n bietjie video sien. Ons wil graag julle aksie sien môre. Wys vir ons gees of julle gees daar by die huis. Ek is seker ons gaan groen en goud dra. 0652188511. Stuur daar vir ons 'n voice note. Stuur vir ons 'n lekker videoetjie waar jy 'n gees vang vir die Springbokke en as jy 'n F1 fanatic is, Sondag, wys vir ons daar waar jy vasgenaal sit agter jou voor jou televisie en vir wie jy skree, whether dit is Lando Norris of Nicolas Latifi, wie ook al, wys vir ons daarso hoe jy skree vir jou gunsteling Formula 1 drywer. En daar het julle guys, South Africa versus Wales. Môre 5:00 Suid-Afrikaanse tyd, Loftus Versveld. Volgens die inligting Alberg, 'n sold out crowd en ons weet natuurlik dat Wallis oor 'n paar weke ook in die Kaap gaan wees. Dink jy ons gaan gelukkig genoeg wees om dalk 'n kaartjie eers te kry?
Ons moet als het is aan bo en ons met veerkykers, yeah, we're gonna be there. Têkkel will be there. I can have to support the boys. I think it's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be a bumper season. It's gonna be lekker to have a full stadium, just have that race and enjoy it. So yeah, looking forward to it. It'll be awesome.
Daar het julle guys, ons commitment is, as julle nog nie vir ons persoonlik gesien het, 'n handdruk kom gee het, 'n bietjie kom sê, julle geniet die show om te sê, julle hou nie van wat ons doen nie. Ons is by die Kaapse Stadion, ek dink dit is 13 July alweer. Oor 2 weke speel Wallis teen Suid-Afrika in die Kaapse Stadion. Ons sal daar wees. Têkkel Talk Show is daar, kom groet, kom skud blad, bring vir ons ietsie lekker om te kou, of kom sê net vir ons hi. Ons sal dan daar wees, maar tot dan is dit Wallis teen Suid-Afrika op Loftus Versveld in die eerste toets van die reeks môre en ons gaan bankpad agter die bokke staan. Ons hoop jy gaan dit ook doen. Alberik, miskien gaan ons 'n bietjie gees vang so 0:30 voor afskop, maar ons wil daai comments en daai video's op ons WhatsApp lyn, op ons Facebook page wil ons definitief sien en ek dink hoe meer mense kan geraas maak en agter die bokke staan, hoe makliker is dit vir hulle om te wen.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. Looking forward to it, guys. Please send us a message. It's going to be awesome. It's always awesome to have you guys say your say. So we look forward to it.
No, for sure. For sure. Then we greet until next time. Just remember, this was a very, very once-off slot. Next week, yes, ek wil amper nou sê next week, Thursday at 8 o'clock. Maar kom Eskom, maar sê Eskom. Maar next week, Thursday, ons is terug op ons usual spot. 8 uur donderdag aande, dan hoop ons om baie meer van julle online te hê. Dit is natuurlik 'n once-off net om julle te groet en HEIN se input te kry oor die Junior Boks, die Springbokke en F1. Dan sien ons julle donderdag 8 uur, selfde tyd, selfde plek, @Tekkel Chat op YouTube, op Facebook, op Twitter. Tot volgende keer, Alberik. Groete, stay safe, good night.